Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
I sacrificed everything for my daughter, but she relegated me to the back of the line at her wedding. When her father chose holidays over her, she blamed me for not pretending. My story with Emily began when I became pregnant at the age of 22. At the time, her father Mark and I had been a couple since university, and we thought our love would last forever. However, the reality of being young parents hit us hard, especially as Mark was focused on his career. We couldn't handle the pressure and ended up separating when Emily was 2 years old. In order to provide for my daughter, I had to put my own dreams on hold and take on several jobs to give us stability. Mark paid the monthly child support and showed up from time to time on the weekends, enough to say that he was present, but without making a real effort to be a present father in Emily's life. The situation took a turn when Emily was 7. Mark married Sarah, a woman who already had 2 children from her previous marriage. From the outset, Sarah made it very clear that she wanted a united family without divisions, which meant that Emily was placed in an uncomfortable position. As time went by, Mark and Sarah had 2 more children, and Emily seemed to become increasingly invisible in that family. Weekend visits became uncomfortable, and Sarah's distant attitude made Emily feel like a stranger in her own father's house. She was never included in family vacations, celebrations, or birthdays. In the family photos of Mark and Sarah, Emily almost never appeared. They always had an excuse: oh, she wasn't there that day, as if they had simply forgotten that she existed. Despite all this, Emily continued to desperately seek her father's attention. By the time she turned 12, I had remarried to a wonderful man who treated Emily as if she were his own daughter. However, Emily never stopped longing for Mark's approval. During her adolescence, I saw her try very hard to fit in with her father's family. She would even cancel plans with me and her stepfather at the last minute and spend weekends glued to the phone waiting for a message from them, only to be told that their plans were just for close family this time. Last year, Emily got engaged to James, an extraordinary man who values family very highly and comes from a very traditional background. I realized that for Emily, the wedding was more than a celebration. It was her chance to show herself as part of Mark's family, especially as she knew that James's parents placed a lot of importance on maintaining a perfect family image. When Emily told me about the seating plan at the wedding, she explained that she wanted Mark, Sarah, and their children in the front row as her real family, while she and I would sit further back with my husband. Her reason was that she didn't want James' conservative family to ask questions about our complicated family situation, and that this way we would appear to be a normal, traditional family. Her words hurt me deeply, but I kept my feelings to myself and told her that I understood that it was her day and that I would respect whatever she wanted. After all, I just wanted her to feel that sense of belonging that she had been searching for so many years. On the day of the wedding, I arrived early to help in any way I could, but an hour before the ceremony I found Emily alone in the bridal room, crying inconsolably with her face in her hands. Through her tears she told me that Mark, Sarah, and their children would not be coming. They had won an all-inclusive vacation package at the last minute and were already on their way to the airport. According to Mark's message, it was too good an opportunity to pass up and the date couldn't be changed. Emily was devastated, not only because of their absence, but also because she had organized everything with the intention of showing them as her real family. She had staked everything on maintaining the image of a happy family, and with a simple message, it had all fallen apart. Emily was crying so hard she could hardly speak. She asked me if I could sit in the front row instead of her father, saying that otherwise it wouldn't look right. I was speechless when I heard her. I, who had been present at every important moment in her life, was now just a last-minute replacement because her father had abandoned her once again. She only wanted me there because he hadn't shown up, not because she wanted her mother by her side. Despite my pain, I saw how hurt she was and I took her hand. I helped her dry her tears, fixed her makeup and reassured her that everything would be all right. But I gently explained that I wouldn't be sitting in the front row. I told her that I had already presented myself as the mother who had abandoned her husband and didn't care enough to stay involved, and that sitting in the front row now as an emergency solution would not change how I had chosen to see myself. I could not be the last-minute replacement just because others had failed her on her special day. Emily looked at me with a mixture of confusion and pain. I suggested that we remove the reserved signs from the seats so that people could sit freely and there would be no empty seats that would draw attention to where her real family should have been. The ceremony went ahead, but the tension was palpable. During the reception, I overheard several guests commenting in surprise that Mark's family had preferred to go on vacation rather than attend the wedding. Emily barely touched her food and, at the end of the night, she and James left early, leaving the guests murmuring in confusion about the family situation. Several days passed without any word from Emily. I only received a brief message saying that she needed time to process everything. I respected her need for space, but when she finally came to see me, her reaction left me stunned. Instead of the understanding I had expected, Emily accused me of having abandoned her at her wedding. She told me it was unforgivable that I hadn't sat in the front row and that I had left her alone facing everyone's questions about why her family wasn't present. It was as if she had completely forgotten that her father, who should have occupied that seat, had chosen a vacation over her wedding. Suddenly, all her anger was directed at me for not having intervened to save her from the consequences of her own decisions. Emily's words hurt me deeply. I couldn't believe she was accusing me of abandoning her after all the years I spent raising her practically alone, without much help from Mark. It was as if all those memories of me working long hours to support her, making sacrifices to give her stability and being there for her at every important moment suddenly meant nothing. She acted as if I had chosen to stand back to hurt her, not because that was exactly what she had asked me to do from the beginning. I found it hard to understand why she was angry with me when it was her father who had abandoned her, and she herself had asked me to sit in the back. Even so, I kept calm and tried to explain to her that I had respected her initial wishes to sit in the back and that I had stepped aside to allow her to create the family image that she had worked so hard to show everyone. But Emily would not listen to reason. She insisted that I had humiliated her in front of James's family by refusing to take that seat and by letting her father's absence be so obvious. She kept saying that I should have gone along with it no matter how late his request was. I was perplexed. For the first time, I realized that Emily was not willing to face her own decisions and that, deep down, she still saw her father's family as her real family even after they had abandoned her on her wedding day. Since that conversation, our relationship has been strained. I find it hard to believe that Emily has decided to direct her disappointment at me instead of facing the reality of how her father treated her. I feel at an impasse, not knowing how to move forward, wondering if there was ever anything I could have done to change her perception of our family. What would you do if you were in my shoes? How can I approach her and help her see the truth of what really happened? Update 1. Hello everyone. I am truly amazed by all the responses I have received. Thank you to everyone who took the time to offer advice, show support and, in some cases, tell me the truths I needed to hear. I have been reading through hundreds of comments and, although it has been overwhelming to process so many different opinions, I deeply appreciate all the support and the different perspectives. I never imagined that so many people would be so interested in my story. I want to clarify a few things that have come up in several comments. First, I completely understand those who think I was wrong to my daughter on her wedding day. I understand why they think I should have put my feelings aside and sat in the front row when Emily asked me to. It was her special day and maybe I should have done it to keep the peace. In fact, this is one of the reasons why I shared my story here, to find out if I could have handled the situation differently. I don't consider myself perfect and, although the situation was difficult, I am willing to learn from it. To give more context, I dedicated my entire life to raising Emily, while her father barely participated. I don't think she owes me anything for this. I chose to be a mother knowing that it would involve sacrifices, so I never expected her to give anything back. But I did expect, at the very least, to be treated with respect. At some point, I don't know exactly when it was, Emily's attitude towards me changed. It was no longer just disrespect, but became something like resentment, as if I were an obstacle preventing her from being part of her father's perfect family. That's why it hurt so much when she asked me to sit in the back and then, at the last minute, wanted me to take her father's seat in the front row. It hurt not only as a mother, but as a person. Emily was old enough to understand everything I had done for her, but instead she decided to treat me as if I were an inconvenience in her life. The situation has now become more complicated. Emily is telling her side of the story to the extended family, putting a very different spin on it. Suddenly they are painting me as the jealous and bitter ex-wife who refused to help out at her daughter's wedding. According to what I have been told by some family members, Emily has told them that I refused to cooperate because I was annoyed that Mark and his family were sitting in front of me. She has even gone so far as to suggest that I was jealous of Mark and Sarah's relationship, which is completely untrue. I got over that relationship a long time ago, and my husband has been a wonderful partner and an incredible father figure to Emily. I never wanted to play childish games with Mark or his family. I just wanted to be part of Emily's life without being left out or belittled. Now there are many family members who have come out in her defense, convinced that I am the evil mother who ruined their daughter's wedding. It's really disconcerting because these same relatives know the story of how Mark treated Emily and me. They know that I raised her practically alone, and they know all the times that Mark canceled plans with her or went on trips without including her. But somehow all that is conveniently forgotten when they hear Emily's side of the story. I would like to say that it doesn't affect me, but it does. I have already received several angry calls and messages from relatives who barely know the situation, telling me that I should have been more mature and put my pride aside for Emily's sake. I never realized how deeply attached Emily was to her father's image until now. Her version of the wedding day makes it seem as if I had a grudge against her father's family and had made a scene out of bitterness. But the reality is that I was only doing what she had asked me to do, even if it hurt. To be honest, part of me regrets not just sitting in the front row and pretending that everything was fine. Maybe it would have been easier for Emily, and maybe I wouldn't be facing this reaction from our family. But at the same time, I feel that sitting in the front row like a surrogate mother would have erased all the years I spent being her only present and stable father. I feel very divided because I love her and I want her to be happy, but how much should a parent give in before they start to lose their own respect? I didn't think that standing my ground by quietly respecting her seating plan would turn into such a big scandal. My husband has been very supportive throughout this. He constantly reminds me that I did nothing wrong by respecting Emily's wishes and that his reaction after the wedding reflects more of his own internal struggles than anything else. He tries to get me to focus on the positive, but it's hard not to feel hurt. Especially now that the family drama Emily has created has put me on the defensive. I feel like every day I have to explain why I didn't intervene to save Emily from her own decisions. To top it all off, James, her new husband, contacted me directly. He was polite but firm, expressing his own disappointment at how the wedding day turned out and suggesting that perhaps I could have done more to support Emily. I can see that he is caught between supporting his wife and understanding what really happened. But it pains me to think that even he might believe that I failed Emily. I could tell from his voice that he didn't fully understand everything I've done as Emily's mother, the long years of being the only person there for her. And now he's taking her side, even though he was upset with her father for abandoning her at their wedding. I never expected things to get so out of hand. And now I wonder if there is any way to make peace without sacrificing my dignity. The idea of apologizing just to keep the peace doesn't feel right to me. But I also don't want this to create a permanent division between us. I'm trying to find a middle ground where I can maintain my boundaries and at the same time build a bridge. But honestly, I'm lost. Emily is my only child, no matter how much her actions have hurt me. I still want to have a relationship with her. But if that relationship means pretending that her father was a good father or minimizing my role in her life, I don't know if I can do it. Thanks again to everyone who has shared their thoughts and advice. This has been a very difficult emotional journey, and I am truly grateful for the support. I will keep you posted if anything changes. For now, I feel like I am at a crossroads, trying to find a path that brings us closer together without compromising who I am as her mother. Update 2. Hello everyone, I'm back with more news and I wish it was better. After the responses to my first post, I've tried to stay calm. I constantly remind myself that this situation is emotionally difficult for everyone, but I'm really shocked by how things have evolved since the wedding. Just when I thought things might calm down, my ex, Mark, decided to turn up to make everything worse. I was just starting to feel that some of my family might be willing to see my side of the story, especially after receiving so many messages about keeping the peace and leaving the past behind. But then, without warning, I got a call from Mark. At first, I was almost relieved to think that he was finally reaching out to take some responsibility for the chaos his absence caused at the wedding. After all, he had abandoned Emily on one of the most important days of her life and she was clearly devastated by it. But instead of apologizing, Mark said about criticizing me. He called me an irresponsible mother for not stepping in to look after our daughter when he couldn't be there. He even used the words bad mother, telling me that I should have put aside any personal feelings and done what was necessary for Emily. Hearing this from him after years of standing on the sidelines while I raised our daughter alone was one of the most shocking moments I have ever had. His nerve in calling me to criticize my parenting after skipping the wedding for a vacation was unbelievable. I probably overreacted. I told him he had no right to question my role as a mother, especially after all the times he had missed events, celebrations, and important moments in Emily's life. I reminded him that he was the one who had disappointed her when she was vulnerable and feeling abandoned, not me. I tried to keep my tone of voice calm, but I also made it clear that I wasn't going to let her paint me as the villain while he ran off to play happy families with Sarah and her children on some paradise beach. Just when I thought this would be it, I started receiving angry messages from Emily. She immediately took her father's side, calling me unsupportive and saying that I had abandoned her at her wedding. She even accused me of making the day all about me by refusing to sit in the front row when she asked me to. It was as if all the conversation we had had before the wedding about her seating preferences had disappeared from her memory. She acted as if I were purposely hurting her or refusing to be present, which couldn't be further from the truth. I kept asking her if she understood that her father had skipped the wedding altogether, but she avoided answering directly. When I asked her for the reason that supposedly made his absence understandable, she dodged the question, accusing me of not being understanding enough. My husband kept reminding me not to let her words get to me, to stay firm but open, and that this was just part of Emily's learning process. However, it is difficult to hear that because I worry that by trying to create this image of a perfect family with Mark, she is refusing to see reality. I tried to explain this to her gently, reminding her of all the times Mark had disappointed her before, but each attempt was met with more defensive messages. She kept mentioning the genuine reason why he missed the wedding, but refused to actually say what that reason was. It's as if she wants me to believe that there is something I don't understand, some great justification that makes her father's actions acceptable, but deep down, I know that's not the case. If there had been a valid reason, she wouldn't have been crying in her dressing room, devastated and humiliated. Emily's messages have been constant, accusing me of turning her special day into a circus because I didn't sit in the front row and didn't follow her vision of family unity. It's almost as if she had rewritten the whole wedding day in her mind to hold me responsible for every little problem. She has even started to mention things from her childhood that I thought we had overcome. Old frustrations that she never really expressed, like not being able to go on all the school trips or not being able to have all the luxuries that her stepbrothers had. It feels like everything is coming out at once and suddenly my whole history as her mother is being questioned. I have tried to be understanding, to respond with love, but every time I mention the slightest thing about what I did to raise her, she uses it against me, accusing me of being selfish. What hurts the most is seeing how she tries so hard to defend her father, even when the facts don't make sense. I constantly remind myself that she is hurt and might not be thinking clearly, that maybe she is just struggling to process her emotions, but it is painful to see her act as if the only person who really abandoned her, Mark, is somehow the victim in all this. My husband has suggested I give her space, hoping that time will help her see things more clearly. I'm trying to follow that advice, but it's hard to stay out of it when my own daughter is treating me like the enemy. Some family members have reached out, offering support and saying they understand what I'm going through, but others have believed Emily's version of events. Now they are calling and messaging me, telling me that I need to get over this and that family should come first. The irony of it all is that I spent my whole life making sure Emily was the center of mine, and now it's like that never existed. I dedicated my time, energy, and resources to making her feel loved and valued, and yet here we are. As much as it hurts, I know I can't force her to understand everything that raising her has meant. I can't make her see Mark for who he really is if she's not ready to see him for herself. It's almost as if I'm blinded by her need for his approval, clinging to the hope that he will finally give her the attention she craves. I have tried to be patient, to give him the space he needs, but I am reaching a point where I don't know how much longer I can go on defending myself to the only person I thought would always understand me. I remain hopeful that maybe Emily will eventually see the bigger picture. Maybe she will take a step back and realize that this image of a perfect family that she has built around her father is not real. But until then, I am just trying to manage the fallout, keeping close to the few friends and family who know the truth. If anything changes or if Emily has a change of heart, I will keep you posted. Thank you for your continued support and understanding. Update 3. Hi everyone, I'm back with what I think will be my final update. I want to tell you how things have developed over the last few days. Although it has been like an emotional roller coaster, I think we have finally reached a moment of clarity. After my last update, I was determined to keep my distance and give Emily the time she needed. But then, to my surprise, James, her husband, contacted me. He wanted to talk about everything that had happened since the wedding. And it turns out that things on his side weren't calm either. He told me that he was beginning to see the whole picture more clearly and to notice certain patterns. Apparently, shortly after Mark returned from his vacation with Sarah and his children, he went straight to Emily's house. James explained to me that Emily was still hurt and upset about the wedding, but Mark arrived with a prepared speech and didn't even let her speak. He launched into a big apology, saying how guilty he felt for missing her big day. He talked about his supposed regrets and reasons, saying that he would have liked to have been there to walk her down the aisle. But then he went on to explain that his obligations to Sarah's children took priority and that we all make sacrifices, hoping that Emily would understand that he was doing his best as a father in his current family situation. What struck me most was James's reaction to all this. He told me that while Mark was still apologizing, he noticed how quickly Emily gave in. It was as if she had been waiting all her life to hear those words. The moment her father started to speak, she forgot all the times he had let her down. Despite everything he had done, Emily was willing to accept his half apology and go back to the same old pattern, making excuses for him. When she later told James about her conversation with her father, she was convinced that Mark's absence had been unavoidable and that I had exaggerated everything. James told me that this turn in the story had surprised him a lot. He had seen for himself how Mark's actions had affected Emily during the wedding and all the drama that followed. It was obvious to him that Mark's apology was just a way of blaming others. But when he tried to mention this to Emily, she became defensive, insisting that her father's reasons were valid and that somehow I was the one who was wrong for not forgetting the past. James was honest with me and told me that this caused quite a heated argument between them. He tried to explain to her that I had always been there for her and that I had done nothing to hurt her, and that maybe she was being manipulated by someone more interested in looking after their image than in being a real father. At that point, James decided to contact some of our relatives who had been at the wedding. He wanted to better understand the situation from their perspective. By listening to their version, people who had always seen how much I cared about Emily and everything I had done to support her growing up, I realized more clearly what was going on. From their point of view, it became clear that this was not just a misunderstanding or an isolated incident, but the latest example of a pattern that had been going on for years. After talking to them, James sat down with Emily again, and this time he was really sincere about his concerns. He told her how sad he was to see her willing to forgive her father for not being at her wedding, all to maintain a perfect family image that wasn't real. He encouraged her to think about who had always been there for her, who had never let her down. He admitted to me that the conversation didn't start well. Emily resisted, she didn't want to listen and kept insisting that I was the one with the problem, but he didn't give up. He asked her to try to see everything from a new perspective. At first Emily resisted, but something seemed to change in her. She decided to go and see her father. This visit turned out to be just what she needed to open her eyes. According to James, when she arrived at her father's house expecting to find understanding and some concern for how she was feeling, instead she found that Mark barely had time for her. In fact, he ignored her, telling her that he was busy preparing for another business trip and that if she needed to resolve her drama quickly, he could spare a few minutes. His indifference finally made her react. For years she had been trying to fit into a family that would always put her last. I think realizing this broke her heart. She left feeling angry and hurt, but she finally recognized that maybe the problem had not been me or how I handled things, but her father's constant lack of interest and responsibility. It took her a few days to process everything, but she finally called me. She sounded remorseful, very different from the defensive person of the last few weeks. She admitted that she had allowed herself to believe in an idealized version of her father, where he could be the perfect father she had always wanted, and that in the process she had directed her pain and anger at me. She told me that she now saw how she had pushed me aside, letting her need for her father's approval blind her. She apologized for the things she had said and for expecting me to be a backup option at her wedding instead of acknowledging all that I had done as her main support. During our conversation, Emily admitted that she had always been afraid of facing the truth about her father because it would mean letting go of something she had clung to for most of her life. But now she understood that my decision not to sit in the front row at the wedding was not a rejection of her. It was a way of respecting myself and showing her that I was not willing to be treated as a last-minute option. I would be lying if I said that everything had been magically fixed with an apology. And while I wish Emily hadn't had to go through this pain to see things clearly, I'm glad she's starting to see the reality of her family situation. Emily and I have planned to meet up soon to talk more openly about everything. Her relationship with James is better and we both know it will take time to rebuild what has been damaged. But I am hopeful that in time we can develop a new understanding and mutual respect. Thank you all for your advice, support, and the many perspectives you have shared. You have helped me stay strong during one of the most difficult times of my life, and I will always be grateful for that.